She's associated with Aegis for more than 4 years, and she has an overall experience of 6+ years. Ma'am is an expert in SQL, Power BI, Tableau, visualization tools, and like other tools as well. So I hope the participants will get the knowledge about the various triggers that are used in SQL. So with that, over to you, Ankita ma'am.
Thank you, Nida ma'am. Thank you for that introduction. So good evening, participants. So let me just share my screen. Yeah, so starting with, I would like to just give a brief about what do you mean by triggers. Then the agenda for today would be, let us see how to create a trigger, what is a trigger, so when we are going to use these triggers. Okay, and once the triggers are created, and then no longer if it is required, then how do you drop it? So what is a command to drop a trigger? And then whatever triggers are associated with the table, so how do you see those triggers using show triggers command? So these are the things that we will be learning in this masterclass today. So starting with triggers, first let us understand what do you mean by a trigger. Okay, so a trigger is a database object. Usually it is associated with the table itself. Okay, so once the table is created and you want to associate it with some event you want to occur again and again with that table, so maybe that time you will be, instead of doing it manually, so these triggers are really very helpful if it is associated with a table, because automatically whatever code you would have written with that table, so using that you will be able to actually trigger it, and you will be able to get the data in other table as well. So that is what we will be learning today, that how do you create a trigger. So whether you can just create two tables, and if from one table you want to take data to other table, and how do you do that? So usually for the backup, right, always we will have something like, in when we are working in a multi-user environment, so you do not know who is going to delete. Maybe there are 10 people who are working together, and some all of them are using this DML command. So before going to trigger, also I would like to mention about DML commands here. So we all know, right, like the different sub languages of SQL. There is data definition language, data manipulation language, data retrieval language, data control language, transaction control language. All these are the different sub languages in SQL. So this triggers is basically associated with the data manipulation language. So in data manipulation language, we have three commands. One is insert, update, and delete. Okay, so using these commands only, you will be writing a code. Like different types of triggers also I would like to mention here, because when I'm saying a particular event, so what can that event be? So if you can just see in the slide itself, I've mentioned trigger event. It can be either insert, update, or delete. So these are the three things, three events that can occur with a trigger. And trigger time is also important. Okay, so in trigger time, we have two things. One is before and after. Whether you want to do it after you insert the values into the table, or after you delete, you want to do something, or after you update, you want to do something, or before insert, means before insert in the sense, so that you will not be able to see that happens at the back end. How it happens is, before you insert the values to the table itself, whatever calculations you would have given, that calculations will appear first and then the inserted value. So that is what is before insert means. After insert, you want to do some changes. Once you insert in this table, maybe I want whatever new things are inserted in the table, so that I want to see in the other table as well. Maybe like a mirror, I want to have a backup. So whatever I'm inserting in one table, I would like to insert that in other table as well. So, but it is not like only extra things you can give. Okay, like who is the user who is inserting those values, so that you will come to know that maybe these particular users are inserting the values. So whoever is inserting, their usernames you can give, and which time or which date is, you can give the system date, so that that particular date and time, that particular values have been inserted. So those records, what you would like to actually get the record, so that those records you can put it in a form of trigger and you can use it. So that is how you can make use of these triggers, really very helpful. So when you're working mainly with the databases, you cannot do, because we deal with a lot of records. It is not just 100 and thousands of records, right? We deal with a lot of records. In that case, you will have to use these triggers so that whatever data you want to give, either a security purpose, okay, you want to maintain an extra copy, so all these things you can have using these triggers. So just to tell the definition, it's a named database object that is associated with a table and that gets activated with a particular event occurs for the table. So the event that I have mentioned you, right? Before insert, after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete. All these are the different events, trigger events. So using these events, what you would like to do, so you can, so whatever event you would have given in a trigger, so that event gets executed as and when you are doing something on. So doing something, when I mean doing something, so again it's the DML commands itself. It is not when you're creating table some trigger is happening, no. So when you are updating something, or when you're deleting some records, okay, or when you are inserting some values, so only during these insert, update and delete commands, this trigger gets executed. The table to which a trigger becomes associated with must refer to a permanent table. So you cannot do it for a temporary table. So whichever tables are permanent, using that tables only, you will be able to create these triggers. Okay, so the syntax is something like this: create trigger. You will have to give a name. Any name can be anything. Give a name to a trigger, and then the trigger time and trigger event. So either it can be before or after, and you will have to give the trigger event, like whether it is insert, update or delete, and on table name, on which table you want to create this trigger. So you will have to mention the table name, and then in syntax you have to mention this for each row, because each and every row you are going to apply this trigger. So you'll have to mention for each row, and then you will have to write the body. So body will be like what logic that you want to write, so that you will be writing. Okay, so let us see it practically as well. So drop trigger command, it is going to drop your trigger. If the schema is omitted, that then the trigger which is associated with that also gets dropped. Means if there is a database, or that, say suppose you have created a table, for that table you have created a trigger. If table itself is dropped, then the trigger will not exist, right? Trigger also will get dropped. Similarly, schema or the database. If database itself gets deleted, then obviously the triggers that are associated with that also gets omitted. Okay, so the command is like this: you will have to just mention drop trigger and the name of the trigger, so automatically that trigger is going to be dropped. So that is about drop trigger command. Then the next one is the show trigger commands. Now what happens is, maybe you have joined the organization, but you do not know, the one who was working previous to you has created a lot of triggers. Then how do you identify that? So you need some command to see that, right? So you will be using a show triggers command. Okay, by just by giving the, maybe, so tables are obviously they are visible to you, what are the different tables associated with each of the databases. So for that, again, your basics, again it comes to picture. So if there are a lot of databases, you will use the database that is required. Then in that database, you will check what are the different tables that are there in that database. Then for each table, which are the triggers associated with that, so that you want to see, then you will be using this command. That's the show triggers command. It is going to list all the different triggers that are associated with the table in a database. You want to check all the triggers in a database, so that also you can just mention the database name and all the triggers associated with that you will get. And if you want a particular thing, maybe you are looking out for a particular table itself, for that table what are the different things that are associated, then you can make use of like clause or some other commands which through which you can just get to know for this particular table itself these triggers are there. Okay, so maybe you can make use of the like clause. If present indicates which table names to match, and causes the statements to display triggers for those tables. For each of those tables, using the table name, you will be able to see using the show triggers command. So you will just mention show triggers from the database, or you can, if you want to make use of like, you can make use of like operator and you can check. Okay. Old and new aliases. So here, whenever we are writing a logic for the trigger, so this old dot column name or new dot column name comes into picture. So what is old dot column name? Name itself is telling you already if the values are existing in the table, then that comes as old dot column name. If the values are not inserted, okay, so before insert the values are not there only, so then again you are going to when you are going to insert the values, before that only you have created a trigger, then you will make use of this alias, that is new dot column name. Within the trigger body, you can refer to columns in the subject table by using the aliases old and new. So old dot column name will refer to a column of an existing row before it is updated or deleted, and new dot column name will refer to the column of a new row to be inserted or an existing row after it is updated. Okay, so whenever we are writing a logic, obviously when you make use of all the column names itself, because database deals with rows and columns only. So whenever you are mentioning anything, you will be making use of the column names for the trigger body, what you're going to write. And there you will have to mention, you cannot just mention the column names there, you will have to give an alias, either it is old dot column name or it is new dot column name, you will have to mention that. Okay, so that is about the aliases. I hope that's clear to everyone how to create a trigger, and once the trigger is created, how to drop a trigger if it is not required. And I want to see the different types of triggers associated with a table or associated with a database. Then you will be making use of the show triggers command, and within a trigger body you want to write a logic. Then along with the column name, you will have to mention old dot column name or new dot column name, depending upon like what you are going to write. So now let me just take you to the practicals. So coming to triggers, so what I will do is first I'll be creating a database. Okay, so for triggers, first let me create a database, then I'll use that database. So once I use, I can just refresh that in the schemas and check whether the database is created. Yes. So let me just start with before insert trigger. Okay, so I have created one table. I've not run it. I'll just tell you about the table, how it is. Create table, give a name of the table, that is student underscore table. So the columns are something like this: student ID is there, student name is there, and there are 5 subjects. Okay, and then apart from these 5 subjects, I have total, I have percentage, and I have status. Okay, so these are the 3 different columns: total I have, percentage I have, and status I have. These are the 3 different columns. Now when I have a student table, okay, so when a teacher is dealing with a student, obviously the student ID, that has to be manually written, that cannot be done automatically. Or maybe you can use auto increment and then it happens automatically if you wish to give some in a serial order. Or if you have some specific thing to be given as a ID, then you will have to do it manually. Name, again, that machine cannot understand, you will have to do it manually, all the different names of your students. And subjects, okay, so subject, 5 subjects are there. Again, how much each of you all have scored, so that subjects values also has to be given. Now what machine can actually or automatically what it can create, that we cannot, means it is not manually required, which it can automatically do is total. It can do, it can add up all the 5 subjects that you have given, right? It can calculate percentage, what is the percentage value that you have scored, and what is the status, whether it is first class, second class, or whether you have scored distinction, what it is. So that it can calculate. So these 3 things, maybe for these 3 things we can create a trigger, which automatically, when you enter the values for these 5 subjects, automatically it will calculate the total as well, as well as the percentage and the status. So these three things it can calculate on its own. So for that, we will just see how to write a trigger for that. Okay. So what I'm doing is now I'm creating this table. Okay. And when I do select star from the table name, when I look into this, you can see the table is empty. It is not having any rows. It's just the empty table because I've just created the table. Before I insert the values, now I'm going to calculate, I'm going to write a trigger. So how do I write a trigger? Let me just go through this, take you all through this code. Okay, so create trigger. Okay, so the syntax is something like this. So creating a trigger, you will have to give a name of the trigger. So create trigger stu underscore insert. So this is my name of the trigger that I have given. Create trigger name. Okay, and the event and time you will have to mention. So event I'm going to give as insert and the time is before insert. So now you all know that the table is empty, there are no values inside the table. So I am going to give it as before insert, means as soon as somebody is inserting the values for these subjects, automatically the values of the total, percentage and status should get calculated, and it has to print first and then the subjects. But when you are doing select start from the table name, you can see everything together. Okay. Create trigger, name of the trigger, before insert on. Now when I am writing on which table you are doing this, that is main important, right? So I am doing this particularly on a table which I have created now, that is student underscore table, for each row, right? We are doing this for each row, so you will have to mention. So for each row is compulsory, you will have to give it for all the triggers that you are going to write. That's a syntax. Okay. Now whatever logic you would like to write, you can write it within, because when you have lot of statements, maybe more than one, more than two statements, you can make use of this begin and end. Within begin and end, you can just write your logic. If there is a single statement, then no need of using this begin and end. Okay, so as I had mentioned that we are going to calculate for the three columns which we have, that is total, percentage and status. So you can see here, I've just written the simple logic. Okay, so total is equal to adding all the subject 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So all subjects I have written. Okay, so till 5 we have just added all the subjects, and percentage is nothing but the total what you get, that because number of subjects are 5, so total divided by 5 you will write. And status as per your requirement. So what I have written is, if percentage is less than 33, then he will be fail. Okay, if it is between 33 and 45, then he will come under third division. 45 to 60, then it is second division, or else he comes under first division. So first, second, third division, or fail. Okay, something like this. I have just written a logic. So this is a normal if else statement that everybody will be knowing. Okay, and once you're done with this statement, so you can just use the end if statement to just close this if statement. And for this begin, you're just closing this end. So within a begin and end statements, you will be writing this logic, whatever is required. So as I mentioned, okay, so alias. So I hope everybody has seen this alias, what I have used. Here I have used alias as new. For everything I have used it as new. I told you whenever you are using the column names in triggers, you have to mention the alias, whether it is new dot column name or old dot column name. Old does not come into picture in this case because your table is empty. There are no old values in the table. So you have just created an empty table and you are creating a trigger. So whenever you are inserting the event that you have given is before insert. Okay. So whenever you are doing anything, automatically everything new is happening. So you're going to make use of this new dot the column name. Okay. So you can see everywhere you have made use of new dot column name. New dot total is equal to all subjects. You have made use of new alias. And for percentage also you have made use of new dot alias, and wherever you are using the column names, so you will have to make use of this alias, that is new dot something. Okay. And another keyword that you are going to use here is the set keyword you have used here. So like you want to do something for that particular column. So you will have to make use of the set keyword, set this particular column as this one. And in the next case where you have made use of status, so there you have used the normal if else statement. There you can just make use of the new dot column name. So if this particular value occurs, then what? Then again you will be making use of the set keyword, where set is equal to new dot the column name status is equal to fill. Okay, so the simple logic. Okay, nothing complicated in this. You have to just make understand the syntax that is used here. That's it. Otherwise the logic is simple, because we have just made use of the mathematical operations that are required. Okay, so the three things: total, percentage, and status. And one more thing which I would like to mention here is that delimiter. The default delimiter of SQL is semicolon. Okay, so what happens is always whenever it runs, okay, whenever the SQL runs, what it checks for is there is no indentation in SQL. You can write the entire thing in a single line, so it will get executed as per our requirement. Like you want to write it in different lines, you can write it. You want to write it in a single line, you can write it. But this is how it is more readable. That is why we write one below each other, because like if it is in the single line, so maybe when I also look at it after some days, I myself might not understand. So it is always better to write it in a readable format. So here what happens is, it always, whenever we run anything in SQL, it checks the previous semicolon and the next semicolon. Between that, whatever is there, it will take that entire thing as a single statement and it will run. So now here what happens is, if I don't use this delimiter, and if I just run this, what happens is, from line number 17, if you see, okay, line number 20 contains the first semicolon. So it will get executed only till this. Okay, so it will not run the next one. It will give you an error, obviously, but it just telling, because it just checks the previous semicolon and the next semicolon, and it considers the entire thing as a single statement. So that is why whenever you are having the set of statements, okay, there are, so you can see there is one semicolon here, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 to 6 different additional, you are having a set of statements. At end of every statement, you are making use of this semicolon. Okay, so whenever this happens, so always make sure that you change the delimiter. Okay, to change the delimiter. So usually we make use of either one single dollar, $2, $3 you can use. So usually in SQL, dollars or at the rate symbol, you make use of these things. Okay, you can write anything. So I have made use of a dollar symbol twice. Okay, I have, so what it means is, when I run this particular thing, so when I run this particular thing, so now I have run this trigger. So what it does is, from this particular point, it will change the delimiter. Okay, it will change the delimiter till here. Okay, it means that it has changed the delimiter. And when you're doing this begin and end statement, so in line number 31, you can see dollar. It means I'm going to end my statement here, and again I'm going to change my delimiter to semicolon. Okay, so if you don't change this delimiter to semicolon, what happens is, the next also it will not get executed. You have to make sure that when you are change the delimiter, at the end again make sure that the next delimiter again it will be semicolon. You change it to semicolon. So because we are used to writing the semicolon whenever we are writing SQL. Okay, so at the end again make sure that you change it to the semicolon, and so that next again whatever you are going to insert, so normal, again you can see in line number 35, 37, again we have made use of this semicolon, the normal insert statements, it gets executed. Okay, so once again I will just give you the go through of this trigger. So whenever you're writing a trigger, if you're having a set of statements, make sure to change the delimiter first thing. Second thing, if there are again more number of statements, then write the begin and end statement. So you're having a lot of statements, then make use of begin and end. And here more important is you are going to use the trigger event or trigger time. So all both makes important, that is before, after, or insert, update, delete, what you want to do. So, and on which table you want to create this trigger. Okay, so that is what we have done. And writing a logic depends what you want to write, so that you can write it in a trigger body. So this is about before insert. So I've just created a trigger here. You can see I have just created this trigger. Now let me insert the values. Okay, I have inserted one value, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th. Okay, so I have inserted 5 rows. So you can see in this inserted values what all I have inserted. You all can just check. I have inserted ID, I have inserted student name, and I have inserted 5 subjects. So you all can see that in the insert statements what all I have inserted: student ID, student name, and the 5 different subjects. Okay, so these are the values that I have inserted. Now next, what I want to check, I will check in the student table. Okay, so when I do select star from student table, which is going to show me the entire table. So if you see this, okay, so you can see I just inserted values for ID, name, and 5 subjects. So where did the values of total, percentage, and status came up? So this is because of our trigger that we created. Okay. So I have what was the trigger that I created? I had used these 3 columns, that is the total, percentage, and status. Using these 3 columns, I am going to, so total will just add up all the values, that is all the columns, and percentage is just divided by 5, and status is depending upon the number of values, like below 33 is fail, right? Above 33 to 45 is third division. Okay, above 65 is first division. So depending upon that, the status values have come up. Okay, so maybe when you have something in calculation which you want to perform, okay, so that you can create it as a trigger. You can just write a code for it, so that automatically it is going to calculate on its own, instead of you doing it manually and inserting. Because other things you don't have any option, you have to do it, like names of students. Okay, you have to do it, you don't have any other option. But maybe some calculations are there, so those things you can create it as a trigger and you can use it. So this was about before insert. Next, quickly, I'll go to the next one, that is after insert. I'm creating one more table, that is student table 1. Okay, I've created one table. So this table contains ID, name, and class. And next, I'm creating a student log table, user ID and description. Okay, so 2 tables I created. One is student table 1 and one is student log table. Now you all can just observe in this trigger is simple trigger, because you don't have a set of statements here, you just have only one value. Okay, so create trigger, I've given a name to a trigger, student underscore insert 4. This is the name of a trigger. After insert, okay, so why I'm using after insert here? So after I insert on student table 1, okay, for each row, so I wanted to insert in the student log table. Means whatever row I am going to insert in the student table 1, those rows have to be automatically inserted in the student log table. So what is that you want in log table? In the normal student table 1, what you have student ID, name, and class, right? You are going to add ID, you are going to add name, and in which class is that student is. So these 3 columns you are going to insert the values. Automatically, the log table also should have some value. So what is that? How you want that to be displayed? So what I have written is the normal insert statement. User ID and description, you have 2 columns here. So user ID, I have written user, so that I understand, okay, so many teachers are there who is inserting the values. So that you want to know. So you will come to know through this, that this particular teacher has inserted all these values. So user name will come, and concat it with like insert, like ID, name, and class. All 3 I want. And you can again observe here, The alias that is there is the new dot column names, because already the values are not existing in the table. After you insert in one table, it is going to insert in the other table. So that is why it is new dot column name. When you, as soon as you insert, that is going to insert in the other table. Okay. So whether it is before insert and after insert, usually the new dot column name also, the alias will be new only always. Okay. You don't have old here. New dot student id, new dot student name, and new dot student class. Okay, so all three columns what are there in the student table 1, those columns will automatically come into this another table. So let me just create this trigger. Okay, and now I am inserting in student table 1. Okay, so let me just, when I insert in student table 1, like the normal execution, student id, the name, and the class you are getting. Now let us see in student log table. Okay, so my user id, that because my user is root. Okay, I have not given my name here, so because while installation I have just given it as root, so you are able to see it as a root, so that you can see on the user id. And in the description, okay, so in the description we have concatenated, no, just with this particular string, that is inserted student record, and just make use of the id, name, and the class. Okay, so id is 1, name is Kunal, and the class is 10. So that way, whatever values you're going to insert in student table 1, automatically those values get inserted in the log table as well. So this is how your trigger will, means the trigger will work like this. When you see the table, automatically whatever you would have done, inserted values in table 1, automatically everything you can see that in the log table. Okay. Let us move to the next one, that's after update trigger. So you can see this employee table. Okay, so in the employee table you have id, first name, last name, start date, end date, city, and description. Okay, I'm going to insert values into the employee table. There are 3 rows in this, so I'm inserting these 3 values. And when you look into the employee table, it looks like this. Okay, the id is there, name is there, last name is there, when did he start, or when did he end the job, okay, which is a city that is working, and what is his description. Now I am creating one more table, that is employee update log, which is just having like a previous one only, user id and the description. Okay, and this table is empty now. We have not inserted, we have not done anything. For this, let's create a trigger now. Okay, so create trigger, just given a name to the trigger. Here you can see after update, means if I'm changing anything, if I'm updating anything, automatically whatever you would have updated, who has updated it? Okay, me. Along with me, there are 5 more colleagues. If I want to see later on who has, so 6 people are working together, who has updated it? Their user will be there. Okay, username or user id will be there, that will automatically come to know that who has updated it and what he has updated. That also I want to know, right? So create trigger, give a name to the trigger after update on this table, that is employee table, for each row. So what I want to check, I want to check whether who is the user and whatever he has changed. Okay, id, if he has changed id with old dot id is modified from old dot start date to new dot start date. So here we have just made use of one column, that is start date. So along with this, in the description, you can make use of all other columns that are there. Okay, so start date is there, then you have id, then you have city. So all this, whichever you want to do any changes, whatever he updates, you want to see all the updates in a table, so you can just add. I've just written it simple. Okay, so when I run this, okay, the trigger is created. So line number 124, I'm just using the update statement to just update one value. Okay, safe update error. So sometimes it will not allow us to update or delete in SQL. So that time you will have to make use of this command, which is set SQL underscore safe underscore updates equals to 0, so that you will not have any error. So now if I update it, it will work. Okay, now I have done one update statement. So now if you see in the employee update log table, okay, now you can see what I have updated. I've just updated one value, so that I am just getting which particular ID was updated. So one is user ID, that is me who have done the changes, that is root. Second thing, in the description I'm getting ID with one. Okay, so first with one is modified. So what I have modified is I have modified the start date. So that whatever I have modified, this was the previous date, it has changed to this value. So that is what is given here. Okay, so whatever changes are done, update and delete becomes very crucial, because you cannot just delete the records like that. Okay, maybe when it is really required, you will have to do it, but then it is always better to have a backup, that who has done those delete records or who has done the update records. So when you have the log table, what happens, automatically you will come to know who has done that and what changes they have done. Okay, so this is about after update. And the last one which I would like to talk is after delete trigger. Okay, so if I'm just creating this delete employee log table, okay, this is also similar to employee table. Now if you see, this table is again empty table. Okay, now I am going to create a trigger after. So here, if you would have seen, so in the very first trigger that we created for before insert, there we have made use of delimiter. After that, we never use delimiter because everything is a single statement. You can see only one semicolon is there. So no need of using delimiter, no need of using begin and end, because you don't have a set of statements. Only when one statement is there, so you can just write it like a normal, you can just make use of all the syntax and the normal trigger what you want to create. So create trigger, name of the trigger. So here I'm going to use after delete. Okay, so after delete, that is a time and the event. After delete on which table? The table which we created for the update, the same table. So after I delete on employee table, if I am deleting anything on the employee table, those deleted records has to go into delete employee log table. Okay, so here you can again see everything is old dot column names. Why are we using old dot column names? That is because here everything is already there in the table. Whatever you want to do it, everything is already there. It is not something which we are going to insert or which we are going to delete later, because it's already there. So you are going to make use of the old dot the column names. For each of the column names, we are having the alias with as old dot id, old dot first name, old dot last name, and so on. And also we have made one more thing is current time, what time it was changed. Okay, so that time also we are going to use. So when I run this trigger, so let's create a trigger first. Once the trigger is created, I am going to delete one record from employee table. Okay, so the record that I'm going to delete is one which got deleted. Now if I see in the employee log table, so you will have this. Okay, so this was the entire row you will get, because it's all like old dot id, old dot first name, old dot last name, old dot start date, old dot city, all these were already there. So you are going to get the entire row, and it got deleted at this time. Okay, maybe date also you can include, current date and time, so that you will come to know which date and which time it was deleted. Okay, so maybe other two examples you all can try before delete. The two things which I have left is before update and before delete. Maybe you all can try that later. Okay, and so let's quickly look on to show triggers. Now, just to quickly tell again, so we created all the different types of triggers. Okay, so here we created the before insert trigger. So before insert trigger, wherein the trigger was associated to the table, and that table for the next three which we created, we made use of two tables, but for the first one we have made use of the single table only. where you just insert the values and automatically the values of other columns in that table gets updated according to whatever you have written in the logic. And the next, that is after insert, after delete, after update, all this we made use of two tables, wherein you delete one anything in one table, automatically that deleted values you can see in the log table. You update anything in one table, that updated values along with who has updated and along with the current date time, you can see it in the other table, right? So this way you will be able to check, okay, the different you can make use of these different events, that is the DML commands, along with the time, that is before and after, and you can use it this way. Okay, now how do you make use of this show trigger? Show triggers is a command. So maybe somebody else was using this. I want to see what are the different triggers that are there in this, associated with this table. Okay, so even if you look at the workbench, so in the schemas part, okay, in the left hand side, now you can see, now if I just refresh this, you will be able to see all the different tables that I created now. Okay, six, 7 tables that are there, that you will be able to see. Views also will be able to see, stored procedures, functions you'll be able to see, but triggers you cannot see. You will have to make use of the commands only to check the different triggers associated with those tables. Okay, now if I just mention show triggers, okay, so whatever databases, so you will be there in some database. Okay, if I want to change the database, then you can make use of use statement and switch to other database and just mention show triggers. It's going to list all the triggers that you created now. Okay, like 4 triggers we created, and all 4 triggers you can see for which table you created, what was the name, what was the statement, like what was the timing, what was the event, when it was created, all that you will be able to see here. Okay, and then maybe you want to search with the table name using like operator, again like employee, something related to employee you want to check. So like, and the percentage symbol you can create, so that you just get the triggers related to this particular clause. Okay, next, you want to see from a particular database. So using show triggers also you can do, but you can just mention trigger schema is equal to TRI. TRI is the name of the database that I have created. So that is why I have given this. So you will be able to see all the different triggers with some extra information, because I have made use of information under schema. Okay, so which will just give you all the extra information like event manipulation, okay, trigger schema, the catalog, some extra information which you might not get when you just add show triggers. So if you want more information or maybe in detail, then you can make use of this information dot schema, the information underscore schema dot triggers, and you can make use. And then associated with a particular table you want to see, from a particular table you want to see, then you can just mention the database name and the table name, and you can use the same thing here along with the schema name. You can make use of the table name as well, and from a particular database, again show triggers from database name, that's also going to give you the, so show triggers from TRI, if I just mention, again it's going to give us the same thing. Okay, same thing in different ways you can use using the show triggers command. And finally the drop trigger. Okay, maybe some table, there is some issue with the table, or you don't want that, or you want to change the, you want to do some edit, and or you want to write a new trigger altogether. Maybe the old trigger which you created is not used. Okay, something like that, or some columns are not used, so whatever trigger is getting executed, maybe it is taking a long time, you want to change it. So all these are the different issues you might face. So in that case, what you can do is, you want to drop a trigger, so you can just drop trigger, this is also not required, just write drop trigger, trigger name, automatically that trigger is going to be deleted. Okay, so if I just delete this, it's going to, name of the trigger is different. EMP underscore trigger. Okay, so automatically it is going to, so you can see here, automatically it got deleted. Okay, so if you do not want the trigger, then you can just delete it, or if the table is dropped, okay, so employee table is there, if the table itself is dropped, then associated all the triggers also gets dropped. And if the schema is dropped, it is but obvious that all the tables, views, whatever is the triggers you have created, so all that again it gets dropped. Okay, so this is about triggers. So to understand triggers, again, there is a necessity of understand. You should have a basic knowledge of SQL. Only then you will be able to understand this, because here I have not told you about all the different commands. Like we did all insert, update, delete. So because these are all the basics, so triggers again it comes into little advanced SQL. So if you are thorough with the basic SQL, then understanding triggers is also very easy. That's it from my side. Anybody has any questions?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Audible. Ma'am, first you use delimiter.
We use
Delimiter, right? What the use of that delimiter?
delimiter. Okay. So
Yeah.
delimiter is basically whenever you so that what is the delimiter of SQL? It is semicolon, right? So whenever you run anything, what happens is semicolon, it will just run that particular line. Now you have written one select star from table name and you give semicolon, you run it, automatically you will be able to see that table. Okay. Now if you are not writing semicolon, okay, if you are writing the next statement, it will take the entire thing as a single statement. You will not be able to see that entire, you will get an error, okay, telling that the syntax is wrong because you have not missed the semicolon. So in when you are writing triggers, what happens, you are going to write a set of statements. When you are writing a set of statements, okay, if you don't change, you are using your delimiter because you're changing the delimiter only for during that period. So you are writing one logic and you are going to change. So here in my case I had changed it to dollar dollar, right, delimiter dollar dollar. And in the end also, if you see, I have just made it as end dollar dollar. So whatever is there inside, everything is taken as a single statement, because from dollar dollar to the dollar dollar below, above and below, it is considering the entire thing as a single statement and it runs. If you don't change, then it will not run because you are using a set of statements.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, then thank you so much for this. I hope you all have learned from me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.